Did you know something new is invented every 10 minutes? Join us as we speak to the innovators reinventing our world here on planet Earth and far, far beyond. Welcome to GTWN Now, a podcast brought to you by the Global Telecom Women's Network and sponsored by CMS Global. GTWN Now introduces the movers and the makers at the cutting edge of technology who are committed to keeping us all connected. In each episode, we invite a leading expert to share her experience building life-changing inventions in places and spaces that don't yet exist, and the inspiration they must muster to tackle the impossible. We also ask our guests to share tips, tools, and strategies to reach your own moonshot. I'm your host, Rosalia Gitau, founder of Bixi, FinTech for Women, and Global Telecom Women's Network International Board member. Welcome to GTWN Now. Today is a very special episode because it marks the 2025 launch of the Mobile Century magazine. The Mobile Century is published annually by the Global Telecom Women's Network and has been so for over 2 decades. This year's issue is particularly relevant because we are now, if you can believe it, a quarter of a century through the new century. And we really need to check the temperature. Where are we in the evolution of communication and technology? And what have we learned, if anything? Lucky for us, though, we don't have to do all of this alone. We get to do it with none other than Carla Cico, who is the editor-in-chief of this year's Mobile Century 2025 issue, where we really honed in on the concept of digital humanism. So a little bit about Carla. Carla Cico is a GTWN board member and a vastly experienced businesswoman who's worked in a number of highly responsible positions for internationally renowned firms throughout her illustrious career. She's been a pioneer in both digital and ESG implementation and has held the position of CEO of Brazil Telecom, one of the largest telecom operators in Brazil with a place on the New York Stock Exchange, where she was the first woman in South America to hold such a position. Carla is a speaker at internationally recognized summits with focuses on telecommunication management strategy, digital transformation, and developing economies. So Carla, welcome to the show.
Okay, thank you very much, Rosalia, for the introduction, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our listener, wherever they are in their time zone. First of all, I think that I don't earn the editor-in-chief label because in reality, this year magazine has been the result of the effort of the teamwork. Last year, Vicky McLeod, that has been the editor-in-chief for the Mobile Century magazine for years, stepped down for personal reasons. By the way, Vicky, thank you very much. We won't be here without you and all your support over the year. And so we form an editorial board. And my role actually has been to outline the different topics in order to have a logical consequence in the magazine, and then I wrote the forehand. So that is the reason why I'm here today, but in reality I represent all the people, including you, Rosalia, of the work that has been done. So thank you very much.
That's very gracious of you, Carla. So I want to just jump right into this year's publication. So as I mentioned, the Mobile Century is the brainchild of GTWN and its founding members, including Vicky McLeod, and it spans across 20 years or over the course of 2 different decades, right? It's in its 10th year of publication. It's a leading industry magazine. And one of the things that's been really interesting is obviously this year features 12 articles, all giving different perspectives on what constitutes digital humanism, right? And it's really interesting because GTWN is not only diverse in terms of its members regionally, but in terms of where we are in our, in our technology development, right? You have from kind of those who quite literally build telecoms to those who are on their second iteration of shooting satellites up in space. So we really cover a wide range of technology. And I'd really love to understand why, how did you guys come up with the topic of digital humanism? Because I will be the first to admit, I did not come up with that topic. I'm a contributor to this year's issue, but I did not come up with the topic. I know it was a deep brainchild of you, our founder Candace, Janet Hughes, who's another one of the co-founding members. I'd love to know why you went this direction, and what does it mean to you?
Okay, first, who suggested the topic for this year has been Victoria Hernandez. That, by the way, she already wrote an article in last year edition, and all of us thought that was a fantastic topics, because it was like like a final, just to close a circle of edition that we has done since 2018 up to now, where we have been focusing on digital, let's say, transformation. Digital transformation is such a large topic, that we could spend hours, days, a month maybe to discuss. But over the year, we have been focusing on different application of digital, okay? So, for example, last year it was a digital generation. The previous year has been digital metamorphosis. But digital humanism, in reality, is what is, in my opinion, the summary of all these topics, meaning how we make sure that the human beings remain at the center of this digital transformation, revolution, whatever you want to call it. And of course, this is nothing to do only, it's not, it has to do also with work, but also in our daily life. Because in reality, nowadays, technology is a part of our daily life. So it really means how we are going to use that. Are we prepared? Are we ready for the challenge that the technology brings to our life? This is an open question. And in the article that has been published in this year edition, we have tackled some of these issues. But of course, one of the good things I think of our magazine is that we are not opinion makers. There are already many opinion makers out there, okay? So we write about our experience, and we just give the reader the opportunity to take example and to think about what we have been writing and how this can apply to their daily life. So we are not saying this is right, this is wrong. We are just saying this is what is happening, or this is what has happened to me. So how can you relate to this? Do you see something in your life, whether in the work environment, in your private life, with your kids? For example, this year there was a very nice article on how young generation related to the technology, written by Isabella Paradis, and in my opinion is an article that should be read by teachers, parents, not just from the CEO of a company, and that. So that is why I think that we focus on that, and I hope that our reader has appreciated our effort in bringing to them a lot of challenge and not the answer.
So thank you so much for bringing up one of the articles. I was actually going to ask a bit of a cheeky question. Who's your favorite child? No. If you had to choose, one or two really insightful that you found notably interesting or notably insightful articles from the dozen contributions in this year's publication, what really caught your eye and why?
Okay, there are actually 3 articles and two written by the same person, Victoria Hernandez, and one written by Letizia Latino, because they are the opposite, and they really show how our magazine is really bring to the table different opinion and opportunity, and the starting point of each article. The article written by Victoria, by the way, written very well, so congratulations, Victoria. And they bring issues. One is about the relationship that then we are going to have with the robot, okay? And how these robots nowadays are already starting, even to be used, for example, in the healthcare. And the other one is about really how we relate with we human beings, how we are ready to face the challenge posed in terms of value and in terms of acting with the technology. But they are written in a more, let's say, intellectual way, okay? So it brings the opinion of other thinker, other writer, and so they give a lot of insight on what has been written. On the opposite, the other article that I really enjoy very much is the one written by Letizia Latino that is about the development of the workforce in telecommunication. And the reason why I really enjoy reading that, maybe I have to say, is because it's about an industry that I know very well, telecommunication. I grown up in telecommunication, okay? Most of my life I've been in telecommunication. But also because it's based on real life facts. So she's not talking about what we have. She said, this is my experience. This is what I have witnessed. This is what could be done, okay? And has been written in a very simple and refreshing style. And so these two different styles, but at the end of the day, are the one who make our magazine different, because we allow people to express themselves in the best way they want, and with always the focus to give to the reader something to think about.
You've really made my job a lot easier because you just plugged two podcasts. We luckily have also brought on Victoria Hernandez and Letizia Latino onto this podcast. Victoria Hernandez, as you mentioned, her piece is so, I mean, at some points, I'm pretty sure it quotes, Foucault. Like, it's so intellectual, it's so well referenced, and it's such a high level thinking and musing about the impacts of technology on humans and vice versa. And this is really illustrative in the conversation that she has with Dr. Serge Tisserand in one of our episodes of GTWN now. So I encourage everybody to go check that out. It's actually a really fascinating conversation. Yeah. It happens to be in French, so for the Francophiles, you are welcome. Letizia Latino is actually the podcast that is going to immediately follow yours. And she is I found the most interesting thing about her piece is so many of the pieces accidentally in this year's Mobile Century focused on artificial intelligence, right? Like, who isn't talking about artificial intelligence right now? Everybody's talking about it. What was so interesting about Letizia's piece is that it was focusing on the human workforce. We can talk about AI, we can talk about space. Somebody has to climb a telecom tower and fix it and install it in order for any of this to work, right? Like, we can talk about all the amazing technology somebody has to build. And it can't just be anybody. This is a highly skilled, really unique labor force. And so she is just such a articulate and passionate advocate for empowering this workforce using technology. So whether it's using AI or using other forms of technology to make it a less dangerous workplace for them, to be able to highlight, where are problems before they start so that the workforce is more empowered in information. And I really feel like her day job and her intellectual contributions to our publication and our podcasts are so aligned with what against itself, but also it's what's happening in the world. I spoke with her through our podcast and said I feel like she's one of the truly sincere kind of users of artificial intelligence to improve the human
Yeah.
workforce, as opposed to AI often being contextualized and discussed as a replacement for the human workforce. So I couldn't agree with you more. I actually thought those two really caught my eye as well. And rightly so. They're so different. As
Yeah.
Victoria is so intellectual, and quite literally, Leticia shows images of taking regulators to climb 100-meter tall towers, right? So just the real practical of like, we can all talk big picture about technology, but somebody has to build and we have to protect those people. And I thought that was super interesting. Um, I would also like, you've been with GTWN for quite some time. I would love to understand how you think the mobile century has evolved. I think one of the things that I'm most startled by, and I I think a lot of people are startled by this, it's 2025. So what that means is we are a quarter way through this new century. Our publication is called The Mobile Century. There's an inference that they're talking about 100 years. We're a quarter way through. How have we done? Where are we? Where are we going?
Okay, I've been with GWTN for almost from the beginning, and it means that 25 years means that I'm old. But apart this, I think that if you go back and you look on over the earth edition, there has been always an evolution. Okay, so at the beginning it was more a contribution. Okay, and it was more, homemade. Let's say homemade, a homemade magazine. And then we started little by little, to start to focus each year on a different topics, to give also the readers a logical consequence of that. And of course, we have also changed a lot, because when we started, it was really focusing a lot on telecommunication. By the way, the name of telecommunication is still there. But
Yeah.
the rapid, but now, is really, to say that today our network in telecommunication is really diminutive, because, as you said, there is space, and then there is everything that involves technology, whatever in the industry, okay, is about technology. What has been changed in the 25 years, in reality, has been our society. That because I think, if you remember, in 2000, there was the internet bust, if you remember. Okay, so everybody thought, the exchange went down. Everybody thought that was the end. In reality, it was the beginning of the new year. And by the way, if I may, the reason why there was the internet bust was because the lack of the proper human resource. This is what about that, because people with wonderful idea, then they didn't have the capability, the knowledge on how to bring, what today is called a startup. Was a startup to the next level. And even nowadays, a lot of startups are failing because of the human factor. Money, you can always find that. Human factor is really hard to find. Talent, knowledge. So that's why I think, going back to your question, is that in the last 25 years, we have seen then, because of the rapid development of the technology, a change not only in the industry, in the different industry, but we have seen a change in the society itself, okay? If you compare, the young generation today are different than before, just because they have access to different tools that, of course, when I was a child, of course, we didn't have that. I think that only a few of, a lot of my friends did not have even the telephone fixed. Your generation a little bit more, but today they are living and breathing technology. Now, what is really the challenge is that we should avoid to have the technology to take over. I think that technology, like any other industrial revolution, because the humanity has been already through different industrial revolution, we should adapt to that, but we should remain at the driving seat as human being. And we have to start this from the family, from our daily life. We cannot expect somebody else, somebody outside to tell us what to do or what not to do, how many hours our kids can stay on internet, for example, okay? Has to be a choice, or individual choice, individual responsibility, individual accountability.
You just said something rather controversial. So a lot of our, if I may summarize as such, are you effectively saying that technology has changed the human? Because so
No,
much of so much of
no,
our publication is which way
no,
does
no,
it
no,
go? Are
no.
we changing the technology?
Exchange, sorry, exchange how we use the technology. That is the point. It's not change, but has contributed to have a different type of society. Because nowadays, for example, kids, they meet online. We didn't do that back then. So the technology, that is what my message is actually the opposite, that we have to avoid the technology to drive our life, but we have to be at the driven seat and then to decide if and when technology can be helpful to us.
How would
But
you go about? Yeah. No,
sorry, go
that's
ahead.
that. How, so in the publication, I think that
Mm.
is kind of the underlying theme that technology is there, that it is having an influence on how we live, whether it goes one direction or another. It's technology affecting us or us affecting technology, kind of up for grabs. What are some of the ways in which some of the contributors to this year's publication propose remedying this possible problem, propose ensuring that we are in the driver's seat?
Well, I mean, it's really depending on in which aspect of technology, okay? Because I think that we have to see different level. There are some levels, a higher level, where really we need to have rules that are, decided by government and by authorities for the use of technology in a certain way, for privacy, GDPR is an example, for example. Then there is the use of technology in the industry. And then here, each company, like each individual, has to decide which technology to use and how to use that. Okay, because, and so here we are going back to what Letizia wrote, because I think that the industry companies, they have to ensure that the technology is a support to the work of the workers, is not only a substitute. Then, of course, there are things that can be substituted by the technology, but this doesn't mean that the human they cannot be reshape their knowledge and to do something else. And then there is a lower level, but I think the most important one, the use that each of us are doing of technology, because we are the one responsible of how much we want technology to take over our life or not. And this is because, sometimes we are lazy, okay? Sometimes we are lazy and easier, for example, to go to Google to search when maybe you could do this by yourself, looking on some book that you have. And people think that they are reading the newspaper and they are updated just because they just read the headline. I mean, for example, me, I force myself also because I like to read a paper and a paper magazine, because when you read a paper magazine, okay, you cannot just stop there. Then you have to go through, and then maybe you find other articles. So again, is a mix of responsibility and therefore, but at the end, all our articles are saying that human beings are first. This is a message that we are given with this year magazine edition.
There was a really interesting point. So one of the podcasts I'd mentioned that Victoria hosted was with Dr. Serge Tisserand, who is a very renowned psychologist and academic in France. And he made a really interesting point that, particularly when it comes to robotic assistance for people, one of the tendencies is maybe people to use courtesies, common courtesies, like, oh, Alexa, can you please look up this? Or, robot, can you please pick up? And he kind of alluded to just by using some of these courtesies and pleasantries, there's a possibility of humanizing the robot. So, a lot of the things that you're saying, like we have to make sure to put the primacy of the human being. It takes so much effort to do that because so much of our default setting is, oh, I just want to be polite. I want to be, a courteous person. But it's almost like you have to remember to whom, and whom should effectively only include a human being or a sentient being, rather. It's a lot, so that issue of personal responsibility, it's kind of tough, especially when we have these social default settings. Not to say you're not absolutely right, but it's tough, right?
Yes, but that is why. But that is why it's important. It was easier. We wouldn't be here to discuss that. I think that first of all, individual responsibility is everywhere. Okay, so it's a basic, at least for me, at the basic of our values. Okay, there is individual responsibility, accountability, and then of course, success if it's individual success. But again, you're mentioning, for example, Alexa. Okay, I have Alexa in front of me here. Okay, and I use for basic things. Okay, again, why? Because if you start to use too much technology, even you as a human person, then you lose a lot. You lose memory. You lose all the different, capability to listen, to speak, to interact. Okay, and this is something that cannot be regulated by some external regulator. It's up to you. And then, of course, in terms of kids, should be responsibility of the parents, of the school, of the educational system, and so on. But now we need to go back to the individual.
So that all being said, you're alluding to what is this going to take for the next mobile century? I'm really curious to know, what does the next mobile century, do you think, look like? Like, be a futurist for a second. What does the next mobile century look like to you?
Well, again, we have not discussed yet. So everything that I'm saying, I want to put up front is just my thinking.
Of course.
But I think that we have already discussed in and out everything that we could about digital technology, digital transformation, impact on the human, and so on. Maybe we should go back to human. Okay, maybe we should go back just to the industry themselves, because over the years we have seen a lot of industry, this industry transformation, and not only because of technology, but just for an example, telco carrier nowadays, they offer more than just mobile or fixed line on internet. No, you go into one of their shop, you can buy electricity utilities or different. So this is, for example, an example how the industry has changed. Not the same goes for other type of utilities, and in general, all the companies change. So what has been, and behind this transformation, there is not only technology, but there is also the human factor, how the human has been changed a lot. I think that another possible interesting topics will be really what has been underlined in the Letizia topics, the fact that the top management, including boards, nowadays are really far away from the bottom of their workers. And maybe this could be also another topic to investigate. This is really happening. We have the right type of board around the globe, and because the industry are changing, company are changing, maybe also the shape or the board composition should change, or their work should change, and the same. So I mean, there are a lot of interesting topics that we could focus, but always related now I suppose related on how this is going not only to affect how has been done, but the human factor. For once to change and to see the human factor, how has used and has changed with the technology.
So from your vantage point, so that's what the next century looks like, bringing the human really back to the center of the fold. From your vantage point then, this year's publication, The Mobile Century, what are your key three takeaways? What are your key three takeaways, and the three key takeaways you want others to opine from this year's publication?
Well, I think that the first takeaway is that no matter in which industry you are, technology has heavy influence and has to be dealt with in a proper way. The second is that again, no matter in which industry you are, you have to make sure that there is a balance in the use of technology together with the workers, the human being. So technology has to be an additional tools to make our job life better, and not vice versa. And the third one is that all our writers are really focused on the fact that the human being, no matter what, should be at the center of this digital revolution, and not vice versa.
All right. Well, here's to, I'm really curious. We're obviously in the show notes, we'll include this year's publication. And it's available on our GTWN website. I'm really curious to hear from those who tune in and read this year's article contributions, what their hot takes are away from that. And I hope to see a lot of alignment, because I think what you're saying is really, I think we really are at a bit of a turning point. I think you're entirely right. The common thread in all of the articles was that the human really does need to be at the center of the equation. Now the question is that the view, is that just our viewpoint, from the kind of humanistic members of GTWN? Is that the wider viewpoint from technologists all around the world? And if not, how do we try and influence that outcome to ensure that in the next century of the mobile century, we're still around? No, but beyond just we're still around, that that humanity and sentience is really at the center of what we're doing of what we're doing as technologists, as futurists. So thank you so much for sharing your insight. Thank you so much for the patience in managing and editing this year's 12 unique contributions. And we really look forward to seeing what you come up with in next year's publication. So thank you for all of your contributions, Carla, and thank you for your, long-standing vantage point and support with GTWN. I've been a beneficiary of that many a times, and for that, I'm grateful. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much to you, Rosalia, and thank you to the work that you have done for this year edition. Okay, so I want really that all the listener knows that Rosalia has been a really, focus point to make it happen. So thank you very much.
I want to thank our guest for joining today's episode of GTWN Now, and give a big thank you to our sponsors, CMS Global, for making this episode possible. Today's podcast will be available on our website, gtwn.org, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you'll be notified when new episodes drop. I'm your host, Rosalia Gitau, GTWN International Board Member, wishing you a week of wonder.